Happy New Year, everybody. It's Mr. 560 here, 560 Gaming TV, and as the title suggests, yes, you are about to watch 20 hours of Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker Reviews in 90 minutes. No, you're not literally going to watch 20 hours in 90 minutes, but I'm going to give you highlights of some of the best reviews, or just the reviews that I've watched. These reviews all came out probably within a few days after the movie was released, as well as the screener, because right now it's I believe it's January 3rd right now. So I've been working on this for a minute. It's been taking some time. I had to kind of stop because of the holidays. You got things to do with family and stuff, got places to go, people to see, stuff like that. Plus, this is a very ambitious effort. I didn't watch 20 hours at once. That would be pointless to sit here and watch 20 hours a day at once. I mean, I could have. I very much could have. I could have watched 10 hours one day, maybe 10 hours the next day. That wouldn't have been no problem. Well, what I did was, anything that was short, all the short ones, I would couple them together, watch a few hours here, watch a few hours there. And as I was watching the videos, I would take clips from the videos of things that people said that weren't just different, but just offered some great viewpoints, or if they were just funny. If I heard someone say something else that someone else didn't say, then, I would throw it in there, because everybody has their own take on this movie. Everybody has their own feelings about this movie. You'd be surprised how many people vastly have different viewpoints on this movie, and everybody's watching the same movies. Some people love it, some people hate it, some people like it, some people don't like it. You know what I mean? It's a lot. There's a lot more than that, and I'm going to make another video that's going to talk about what I learned from watching this 20 hours of reviews, and you'll be surprised what I've actually found out. You may be surprised. Some of this shit may not surprise you. Each video that is in the bulk of this video will have anywhere between 1.5 to 2 minutes worth of clips. They could range between 20 to 30 seconds long. Very rarely would I have a clip in here that's about a minute or whatever on average. Some people I've had more than 4 or 5 clips, maybe 6 or 7 clips. It all depends. On average, there's about 4 to 5 clips per video or per review that I watched, and then there's about maybe there's like a few of them in there where you'll see them that the highlight goes to 5 minutes. Those videos where you see longer highlights, where it seems like they're going past the 2 minute, 3 minute, 4 minute mark. Those are videos that they were 40, 50, 60-minute long videos. So 4 or 5 minutes is really not much compared to the overall size of the video. And how did I find these videos? Well, I just went on YouTube, typed in Rise of Skywalker Reviews, and there you go. So once I started seeing what the reviews were, I went down the list, started grabbing a whole bunch of them. When I started this was like right after, maybe 2 days after the screener was released, but like a day after the movie came out in the theaters. So I just started grabbing. I grabbed like the first 50 or so of them. It had to be 50 different ones. It couldn't have been. I didn't even actually, as a matter of fact, it wasn't even about me purposely taking 50 videos. I just started grabbing videos like crazy, and then the numbers just started adding up, and everything seemed interesting. And some people have more than one channel, and some people were doing more than one review. So I had to make sure to pick the right reviews for this, that, and the other, and I took it from there. So I make note of what these people were saying in this audio, and then I would take the highlights and clips and things like that. And now I've converted it into a nice little highlight reel for you. It's 90 minutes long, so this will offer you some pretty good perspective yourself. And if you decide you want to watch any of these videos, I will have links to a playlist I created where all of the videos are in there. Nearly all of them. I don't think I might have missed a few of them, but there's going to be an extensive playlist of just Rise of Skywalker's reviews that you can just go through and watch. If you see a reviewer in one of these videos and you like what they're saying, feel free to go into the playlist and find the video and check it out, or just type the person's name into the search bar and check it out, and you get to see the whole thing of what they're saying. Because there's a lot of great reviewers out there, a lot of people who are very passionate about Star Wars. This is a very pivotal moment for them in their lives, people who have a lot of connection to Star Wars. So with that said, let's get this thing started. Here you go. 20 hours Rise of Skywalker's reviews in like 90 minutes, probably a little bit less. Enjoy.
Little personal info about myself. My father hates movies. He never watches movies. And it was always a big point of contention between us. But he loves Star Wars. So it was one of the very few things that I had in regards to film that I could connect with him on. And so Star Wars was always very special to me. And seeing how it's being treated by the people who own it, and the reaction that has resulted, it was honestly painful for me. The second time I saw this movie, it continued. The issues I had with it, they piled on. And it's very weird for me to have liked two movies in a trilogy, but then see the finale and then start to like those other movies less, because as a whole it just doesn't work as much anymore. And I was talking to my wife on the way home. One of the reasons why Rey as a character isn't as developed as she could be is, I think, because they treated her past as this big secret. We're 3 films in, we're figuring shit out about her. Because they treated her past as this mind-shattering secret we weren't supposed to know about, they didn't really develop her that much. I hate Star Wars. Star Wars doesn't mean anything to me anymore. Videos over the past couple years, and I haven't really been able to connect with it. I've just not cared about talking about Star Wars because it just isn't fun. It doesn't feel like it used to. And this was the movie that made me finally sit back and go, you know what? They kind of fucked up.
They finally put a little bit of respect on Finn's name. I was very disappointed with progression of film of Finn, how his character has been underutilized and really underdeveloped throughout the course of the previous 2 films. And I would have to say that they do a better job of Finn. He's a more respectable character. He's not a coward as he was in The Last Jedi. And I really feel as though they took a step in the right direction. But even though I enjoyed his character more in The Rise of Skywalker, I still have some issues with how they've handled Finn over the course of these 3 films, which I'll get into when we talk about what I didn't enjoy about the movie. I read the first reactions after the premiere, and everyone said there was a lot of fan service. When I was watching The Rise of Skywalker, I was like, this is exactly what they're talking about. There are moments of nostalgia where it just really brings you back to why you are a Star Wars fan. And I really enjoyed those moments. Really, without those moments, I would have had a worse reaction to Rise of Skywalker than how I felt after walking out of this film. Rey I know it hasn't been that much time that has transpired from The Last Jedi to Rise of Skywalker. So her being this like super master Jedi, I was just like, when did she learn how to do all this stuff? And in the movie, they say she's been training. But I was like, girl, it ain't enough training in the world that is gonna get you from where you were in The Last Jedi to where you are at the beginning of Rise of Skywalker. I was just like, this makes no sense. How did she develop all of these powers? How did she learn how to use the Force the way that she does? Which it does deliver some cool moments, but it's just unbelievable to think that she was able to progress that much in her training in between these two films. The directors, they had no vision of where they wanted to go from The Force Awakens all the way up until now with Rise of Skywalker. And it's one of those moments, you know, when you get in trouble and you do something really bad and you think, you know, you're gonna get your butt beat or you're gonna be grounded, depending on what type of parents that you have. But what hurts you the most is when your parents sit you down and say, I am disappointed in you. I am disappointed in the decisions that you have made. And that's how I feel about these last three movies.
So it needs to be said, yes, the movie does feel like a bit of a hot mess highlight reel of a Reddit wish list of Easter eggs and references. Like they weren't quite sure how they wanted to end things, and J.J. Abrams came in really late. They didn't have a lot of time to finish the script, so they said, what can we give fans that they will hate the least. Like, there are a number of choices we can make based on what's been set up in the trilogy so far. We need to answer all these questions. What are the choices that we can make that people will hate the least? So we'll do that. The actors do try to do their best with the material, but most of the time there aren't any real conversations happening between people, because a lot of the movie feels like a glorified fetch quest like you would see in a video game. Like, a lot of you have been playing Fallen Order for the last couple of weeks. It's a great video game, but that genre is meant to be that way by design. Movies aren't meant to be glorified fetch quests. So a lot of times when characters are talking to each other, the dialogue that they have is really just there to set up something else another character needs to say. So they can turn around, have their big moment, the camera zooms in, they say something dramatic that then drives the characters to the next step of their fetch quest. So the movie comes off a lot like a video game in that way. A video game with amazing, huge cutscenes. There are a lot of things during the movie that do contradict earlier parts of the canon, the earlier films. I also just saw recently that the Lucasfilm Story Group, that are sort of the keepers of the canon and help people and filmmakers when they're making this stuff so that it makes sense with the other stuff that's come before, were not involved with the making of this movie. So that was not a big surprise. Remember that moment during Force Awakens where Han Solo says to Finn, "That's not the way the Force works." So I feel like a lot of the minor missteps could have been avoided had they brought in at least a couple of these people whose job it is to remember everything and every detail about Star Wars so that they don't wind up stepping on the toes of the movies that have come before. All three of the new films kind of feel like they're fighting each other for dominance, but I think the overall message that they were trying to go for with the new films is that it doesn't matter if you were born into a legacy of evil, you can choose to be a good person. Talking about the very end of the film specifically, where she buries the lightsabers on the large moisture farm on Tatooine, I think this scene was more for the fans than it was a logical choice for her character. Like, they wanted to say, yes, technically there aren't any living Skywalkers left, but Ben Solo's part Skywalker, and his life force now lives on inside Rey, and those original characters are so important, we want to show how important they are by making them so important to Rey that she chooses to take their name and carry their legacy forward. There's the Ben Solo reason for picking the Skywalker name that she has, but also I think the idea that the Force ghosts of Luke and Leia show up at the end, because within the script at least, whether or not you believe it, she felt like they were the parents that she never had.
If you line all three movies up, they don't necessarily cohesively go together as, well, definitely the original trilogy, but, you know, even the prequels. Say what you want about those movies, the overall arching story, there is a beginning and an ending. Maybe the execution wasn't the best getting there, but they got there and they told an epic story. Within this trilogy, as a part of the overarching saga, all three movies feel very distinct and different. And sometimes that's okay, because there were so many elements that I questioned. Elements I can't get into right now because this is a non-spoiler review, right? Things that are done within the Force, things that characters do, things that I never thought I would see in a Star Wars film, don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, that were done in this movie that I have questions about. I'm like, all right, how did that character do that? And then all throughout the film, there are plot points brought up. There are characters that say things. Finn in particular, he says something earlier on in the movie, and we think we're going to get some sort of resolve from what he says. And I didn't even realize it when I walked out, but thinking back, I'm going, did we ever... No, that was never brought up again. Josh, you told me this. He's been standing here the whole time. Josh, you told me this when we walked out of the movie. Weren't there so many transitions? Get over here. Yes, there were. How'd you feel about the movie as a whole?
Well, if I was going to give my score,
Okay.
I would execute Order 66.
All right. They really did make a movie that is pure, unadulterated fan service. We're going to take this tweet, we're going to take that tweet, and this tweet, and we're going to combine them, and we're going to make a movie about it. The new characters we were getting posters for and pictures and art, and it's like, yes, that looks really cool. Wonder who she's going to be. And then they end up, we don't know anything about them. Now, maybe at the last minute they'll be like, oh, by the way, you are this, or you're here, or I'm friends with you, or I know you from somewhere. And I'm just like, okay. I mean, they threw so many. I mean, the final 30 seconds of this movie, it's like, by the way, actually, and as negative as I sound, I still had fun with it.
This movie, Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker, in my opinion, was really amazing. I genuinely, wholeheartedly loved this movie. I really did. When it comes to Star Wars, this is my thing. This is my bread and butter, man. This is like... It was a good movie. Was it amazing? Was it perfect? No. Rise of Palpatine. I called it. I had a lot of different theories, but that was one of them that I always wondered. I'm like, that jabbing motion, we've seen that before in Revenge of the Sith against Mace Windu. We've seen that. That was pretty cool. I'm down with that. As for that explaining how powerful she is, it makes sense. As for that giving her a pass on not having to train, no, I don't like that. Palpatine in this movie was OP as hell. He was really cool. He was insanely powerful. He drew the life force of both Ben. I'm jumping all over the place, but these are the parts that I really want to talk about first. He drew the life force from Ben and Rey, which is something that I thought up a while ago. Just as I have a ton of different theories that I throw out there, and some of them stick. This one stuck. That's good. That was cool. Kylo in this film is much more powerful than Rey. Alright? Plain and simple. He can't force heal because that is not a dark side power. Darksiders cannot force heal. They can drain the life energy of other beings, as a Darksider would do, but they cannot force heal. They cannot heal without doing some. You give some healing and you take some life. It's Jedi can do that. Ben can't, and he could at the end of the film because he was on the light. She throws the lightsaber into a fire. She takes Kylo's ship, throws it into a fire, outstretches the hand of Luke Skywalker, and says, "A Jedi's weapon deserves more respect." I teared up. I was like, this is great. Thank you so much for fixing that, because it was such a garbage scene in Episode 8 that I really hated. I mean, this is your father's lightsaber, and you just throw it over your shoulder like you don't care? Like...
And from a business perspective, I thought it was a very bad move, and I've likened it to Batman v Superman, where I had a similar situation. I liked the movie, but yet I understood why it angered so many. With Star Wars is that they made too many movies too quickly. But I think that's incorrect. I guess that's an element of what happened, but that's not the big mistake. I think it's pretty clear to anyone, and probably Bob too, he just doesn't want to say it. But Disney's actual mistake was trying to wrap up the storylines of the original characters while simultaneously introducing new characters. And as a result, every character got shortchanged. Let's hope that Disney's trilogy here serves as a warning to other franchises and Star Wars itself going forward, because it will be back. But that's that you must have a concrete outline, right? No matter how you feel about Rian Johnson's The Last Jedi, he has admitted himself to throwing out J.J. Abrams' original loose ideas. It's kind of on J.J. too, because he didn't give a concrete outline going forward. He was like, this is kind of the direction I'd like to go in. This movie, as has this entire trilogy, continues to borrow heavily from Avatar: The Last Airbender, which I called from day one. In fact, the people next to me at the press screening when Daisy Ridley's Rey first showed up on screen, they were like, boy, she looks like Aang. And she did. She's an extremely realistic action hero. I think she's great. Ridley also has a very expressive open face, which makes her mesmerizing. Actually, I would think that's the right word, mesmerizing, in her plethora of close-ups. Her eyelashes are so long! She seems not to be wearing any makeup, but she looks fantastic. Oscar Isaac becomes the new Han Solo we always knew he was meant to be. And I can't believe it. Finn is not only finally a respectable character, but a really likable one at that. All of their scenes, mostly together, are excellent, and they captured the classic Star Wars magic. They were great. I know they don't want to be Disney Plus, but I would totally watch a Finn and Poe Disney Plus series. And that's probably where that's the only real place I think they can go, because I think going forward we would like a totally fresh trilogy.
I agree with everything you guys just said, but I think it would be a shame if I didn't just give my gut reaction watching this film, because it is the end of this saga. I had such an emotional reaction, and I cried for a collective 30 minutes during this film. I think part of it was my unresolved grief for Carrie Fisher that I've never dealt with until seeing Leia actually die on screen really got me. And that kind of started the waterworks, and then it led into the Han scene with Ben, and that made me cry even more. And when he's just like, "Hey kid," and I was like, still crying, and then it goes to Luke as a Force ghost, and he gives Rey Leia's lightsaber, and I'm just still crying. And I was like, I don't know when I'm gonna stop. You guys need to give me a break. JJ is so good at starting things. Like, JJ will make a hell of a pilot for a TV show, right? The Lost pilot is one of the strongest pilots ever created. Fringe, season 1, season 2, incredible. Then he just kind of pieces out, and he leaves it to someone to finish. Doesn't really have a plan there. He might have some ideas, but I was kind of dreading. I'm like, he's never closed before. He's not a closer. Let's see how he closes this out. So this was kind of, in a way, new for him.
Starting back up, ramping up, and in secrecy, right? Yeah. So I guess you're led to believe that he's I don't know, has he been recruiting?
Yeah, do you buy that? Do you buy that this is what's been going on the whole time, or does it feel forced?
I mean, it feels forced for sure.
Yeah, to me it felt really very forced. But that's a difficulty, right? You're trying to include her in the film with some extra deleted footage that you had on the cutting room floor, and they did the best they could. I think we were throwing ideas out in the Slack, and Meg said something like maybe it should have been an opening crawl that, like, hey, she passed away, and the Resistance is trying to recover from that. I thought that would have been a lot more effective, because going into I knew that they were kind of trying to cheat the camera a certain way and make it look like she was there, and I just feel like a lot of the reactions were just like her stone cold face, just like reacting to someone saying something, and it kind of really didn't work for me that well.
I am in open shock and disbelief that this is how they chose to film, to finish this. It's the last film. It's over. They can't get this one back. This is what we get. And you know what? I put the blame squarely on Kathleen Kennedy, who is in charge of all of this. To stupidly go into a new trilogy without an actual plan? Are you kidding me? Without a complete, overarching story that they wanted to achieve? Who the fuck does that? I think she executed Order 66.
Commander Kennedy, the time has come. Execute Order 66.
You can imagine what watching the film is like. The first act is an absolute mess. It flies by. In fact, it's so funny and ironic because at one moment they pull this move out of their ass that makes no sense called hyper jump skipping. And they skip between worlds while being chased by TIE fighters. And he's saying, how are you doing this? No, why are you doing this? And it's as if that was the movie in the first act. It's as if the movie was hyperspace jumping and skipping all throughout time. I was like, what the even our theater was like, what? There are so many moments like that. Rey as a character, just general, she's not interesting. Nobody can identify with somebody that's perfect, and then by the end of the film is more perfect.
They butchered your franchise. This movie got me very close. I'm talking about this close to going to the dark side. You know the dark side, which is full of rage, anger, hatred. And I was experiencing that while watching this film. I was experiencing that. And the only way that I stopped myself was that I had to reset my mindset. I had to reset the framing of this film. Instead of looking at it as like a serious Star Wars film, I had to think about it being a comedy. That is the trick. That is the trick. And then he has like this sick compulsion about Rey. I don't get it. Was him and Rey like getting down and dirty on like the millennial? Like I what is going on? We can't leave her. We can't leave her, bruh. She doesn't even feel like that about you. What? Why? How are you whipped without even getting a taste of it? You didn't even get a taste of it. And I kid you not, there's a part in this movie where it is completely ripped from Step Brothers. I swear, I promise as a Boy Scout. Bruh, there's a part where Finn meets another individual. And they're like, wait, are you from the Order? Yeah. Oh my God, so am I. What was your badge number? FN664. Oh my God, mine was FN665. Oh, did we just become best friends? Yup. Yo, f this movie. Force pulls your shit, Pimpin'. You wanna know where I remember even seeing that happening? Was like in the video game, Star Wars Force Unleashed. Okay, that's the only time I remember that happening. Like even with Yoda. Yoda was straining with the beam that came there. He was like, "Grr." But she is force pulling, force holding, I don't know, a ship, a massive ship. Pimpin', I guess she just skipped all the tutorials. She skipped all the tutorials and just put in God mode. But riddle me this, Batman. How in a Star Wars film you're gonna have bad lightsaber battles? How? Like the scenes are just boring. Cause like I said, no one gets injured. No one really gets hurt till the final, and that's some bull crap.
I have a hard time believing that they went into this without writing 3 full stories, even before they shot a single frame of The Force Awakens, but whatever, it's only Star Wars. The Force Awakens was a redo of A New Hope. We know that. This is sort of like Return of the Jedi 2.0, which isn't horrible, but it does sort of cheapen Jedi and all the sacrifices they made and sort of Vader's redemption. First thing I liked is I didn't cringe with pain of my 40-year investment being laughed at by filmmakers. That's the first thing I loved. Not once did I feel that way. I love that the heroes get to be the heroes. The fights are amazing. Like, they're amazing in this movie. The connection between Rey and Kylo plays way better than you think it does. There's a ton of really great surprises. C-3PO is sort of more human almost than a lot of the actual people are. The new characters are great. The fact that this is even a headline is ridiculous.
I know, but I know that you don't care. Like, it doesn't bother you or kind of.
No, what I'm saying is that the fact this is even a headline is ridiculous because it's 2 characters that nobody knows. Right. It's not like it's a main.
Well, I saw Star Wars fans are complaining already online.
No, but it's not like it's a main. But the thing why I blow this off is because the way it was shot, is that it happens for a split second in a frame where there are no other main characters in the frame, and it's 2 seconds, and you can tell that it is designed to make North American audiences happy, but so easily cut out for the Chinese market.
From my perspective, and I'm saying this as somebody that really loves Last Jedi, I felt Last Jedi was this very nice, simple story. This is definitely not that.
That's part of the reason why my initial tweet said it takes a good while for this movie to get going, because it's all over the place, and I found it surprising that they made a couple of choices to introduce like brand new elements to, to the Force and to other things. And you need to expand a story, more screen time with them.
I agree. They were great characters.
I do think that Kerry Russell and Naomi Ackie made the absolute most of what they had, and they make a very, very big impression. The evolution of certain themes, whether it's throughout the entire film franchise or specifically in this final trilogy, in particular, the use of Rey's theme in this movie, it's incredible.
It's so good that there were moments in the movie where I was mad about something that was happening plot-wise, but I was still crying because the music is so good.
It really works.
So good.
I don't know, certain things felt too easy, or things that were happening along the way were just dropped into characters'
There was
laps.
a lot of nice coincidences in this film.
A lot of things that had stakes and then all of a sudden had no stakes anymore. It was all erased, and I was getting a little frustrated by how often that was repeated.
And now finally, we arrive at our final scene, with Rey and BB-8 visiting the Lars Moisture Farm on Tatooine, where this saga began. It's now half buried in sand, and Rey sleds down a dune, calling back the opening shots of her in The Force Awakens, all while John Williams' Rey theme plays. Rey takes out Luke's and Leia's lightsabers, and she wraps them up, and she uses the Force to bury them in the sand. But then she reveals a new lightsaber that she has built for herself with a yellow blade. Now, this is significant to Star Wars lore. Yellow lightsaber blades have been associated with Jedi Sentinels. First introduced in the video games, Sentinels seek a balance between the Consulars and the Guardians, and they wish to educate themselves on the more practical aspects of life. Unlike others in the Jedi Order, Sentinels recognize that the Force is not the solution to everything. Maybe this suggests Rey's future as a Jedi less bound to the Jedi Code, one who embraces practical skills instead of the eternal battle between light and dark. Traditionally, the Kyber crystals that power lightsabers only take on a color once they have been gathered by a Jedi Padawan, and a bond between the crystal and the Jedi has formed as that lightsaber is constructed. So maybe this yellow color paints Rey as a whole new kind of Jedi with a whole new outlook. Rey began her journey anonymous. The Last Jedi suggested that her parents were nobodies, but in The Rise of Skywalker, she learns that she's actually the heir to the most important man in the history of the galaxy. But her parents, in trying to protect her, left her with the gift of freedom from that past, and the gift of a choice to forge her own identity. And that identity that she chooses is a family that had a far greater impact on her worldview. The final image of this nonology solidifies that choice, with Rey watching the same binary sunset that Luke Skywalker longingly gazed upon in the first film. Also the image that closed out the prequel trilogy. This is a kind of rhyming poetry that George Lucas always hoped for, the duality theme reflected in the two setting stars.
Find out just how the Skywalker rose. Palpatine's back here and decompose. The last McConkey.
Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. Whether you like it or not, the official end of the historic Skywalker saga is here and ready to collect all of your fandom monies. Why is this the end of the Skywalker saga when the title is all about The Rise of Skywalker? Well, that drifts into spoiler territory. But I think ultimately it's because Disney has to cut ties to the legacy if they ever want fans to change what they expect out of these movies. What did I think about the story? I think for starters, it's very obvious this movie is overpopulated. There were a lot of moments where I just felt like JJ was letting his friends have single line cameos, and that got a little overboard. And I gotta say, I'm just kinda over the Emperor and his obsession of sitting in a dark room, knowing he's in charge of all of these systems and planets that he has no intention of ever using for anything whatsoever. It's like, get a hobby. Get robot legs and arms if you're so feeble. I mean, there's other ways to enjoy life.
My hobby is training apprentices.
Go outside! No! So Ben is the grandson of Anakin, and Rey is the granddaughter of Palpatine, making them a Force dyad, something we haven't seen before. I thought that was a cool way to connect them and bring the fear of the dark side to both characters. It also kind of feels like they're giving the Mary Sue label a little more merit.
Look, it's a map to the Wayfinder. Isn't it cool and mysterious?
Who the heck made this dagger? Was it someone who knew the shape of the destroyed Death Star? Are we to believe that the Emperor controlled someone to craft this dagger with the secret instructions and the visual markings to match the shape of the wrecked Death Star to point someone to a hidden Sith Wayfinder?
Sound like such a dork right now.
Shut up! This is important stuff here!
Did you like Zori Bliss?
She gave Poe a little more backstory, but wasn't like, oh man, I want to see more of her.
Did you like Jana?
She was okay. I like the idea of the former stormtrooper angle. I expected that to maybe mean something more to her and Finn.
What about General Pride? What about Dio?
I don't care. He's like the rebel version of the mouse droid.
What about Cloud?
No! Get that freaking wiener slug out of here. Come on.
What was your favorite?
My favorite was Babu Frick, hands down. He's so clueless and innocent. I don't know why, but that guy really made me laugh. Probably because I have a 2-year-old that babbles just like him. I'd say he's my favorite new character. All of the Jedi talking to Rey and getting her fired up. It just didn't hit for me. I don't know. I feel bad. I should be like, yeah, they got this person, they got that person, they got that person. It's got all of them, y'all. It just, I don't know. I saw it coming, you know? It just all felt kind of predictable. What else can I say about the movie?
What was the point?
Cash money. That was always the point. Cash money. Cash money.
I pretty much spent 3 days unboxing boxes and putting together furniture for the new house. So as soon as I walked out of the theater, I looked at my wife and I said, I'm guessing that has a 61% on Rotten Tomatoes. Just a gut feeling. Just a number that popped into my head that I was throwing out there based on my feelings at that moment. And she said, it has a 58. And I went, huh, because that was kind of in line with where my head was at. And then I asked her what the audience score was, and she said an 86. And I whipped around and I said, what? There are a lot of things that just are kind of introduced for this movie, right? Kind of shoved in there. That would be really easy to bitch and moan about. But when it comes to what it's and who's it's and expository dialogue, well, I'm okay with everything we need to know going into a Star Wars movie being in the opening crawls. And this movie, more than any other Star Wars movie, kind of felt like it was made by StarWarsFanFilmGenerator.com. Click here to generate Star Wars fan film. Palpatine was a clone, Snoke was a puppet clone, Rey is a Palpatine, the Emperor has a big-ass navy with 1 billion Star Destroyers, each with the ability to blow up a planet, Palpatine shoots lightning into the sky and shuts down a bunch of spaceships. The Rise of Skywalker makes me appreciate The Last Jedi even more. Because at least that was inventive, at least it brought new concepts, at least it had surprises, at least it wasn't completely predictable. It just kind of felt like a sidestep. You know, we had some really fun things going on with the previous 2 sequel movies. A lot of this just kind of felt like you were driving down the highway and all of a sudden you just jerked your wheel to the right into the goddamn trees. I liked the conclusion of the film, or if it was just kind of, you know, added to this movie. But her just being a Palpatine, you know, to me it's a more boring idea than the idea that was given to us of her being a nobody.
You know, I can understand if some of the new characters that they introduce were just side characters, like not supporting characters, side characters. Maybe like pilots, like Nino, whatever his name was, you know, that dude.
Yeah.
You know, something like that. If you introduce new characters like that, that's fine. Those are fun. But they're introducing new characters that we're supposed to bond with. We're supposed to actually make these characters feel like they always have been a part of this crew.
You know what else? These new characters they introduced, they are potentially more interesting than the ones we've been following.
Lando came in. Let me tell y'all something. I like it. Lando came in ready to.
Yeah, it did.
Lando, I had to laugh at Lando. Lando stuck to his character. Lando gonna be Lando, horny. Lando came.
What's going on with you?
Yeah, Lando came in, and he even asked Rey like, "Hey, what Leia up to?"
He totally did.
Yeah, I heard Han dead. Yeah, that sucks. So she seeing somebody? And I don't think it's cool the way they force characters in this. No pun intended. But at least in the like some of the shows, they try to explain a backstory. And they know the fans that are keeping up with the movies are keeping up with things like Clone Wars and things in some comics. And so at least they try to give some backstory. This is just rushed, man.
I don't hate it because the movie is so designed not to be hated. I mean, it's J.J. Abrams is Mr. Safe. It's almost Rian Johnson came in and did some things.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, a lot of it is because it seems like Star Wars can't escape what happened before and the fan service. But Rian Johnson did do some interesting things. Some of it worked really well. Some of it was abysmal failures. And for his troubles, the movie, from some people, it's their favorite.
Yeah.
And for other people, he was slagged.
Crucified.
To have even J.J. Abrams come in and talk shit about him saying, don't worry, y'all, I'm going to fix this.
He sure did.
Yeah. It's like, wow, you just threw me under the bus like that.
J.J. Abrams might as well just stood over his head, spread his ass cheeks, and shit on the top of his head. Listen, man, I've given up on that give the fans what they want bullshit a long time ago, because giving the fans what they want keeps us going through this same cycle. I know. And it can be avoided.
Yeah.
It can definitely be avoided. Man, I'm not saying this from the place of being a broken fan or are an entitled fan. I'm not saying that. I judge movies today on how, and listen, I don't even begrudge them for being successful. There's a lot of movies that aren't written well, directed well, done well, and they do well, and after I'm done reviewing them, like, bullet for you, good. But while I'm sitting up here talking about it, I judge a movie based on its writing, on its direction, art direction, and in this, the writing is terrible. The writing is awful in some parts.
Yeah. The character Finn is useless in these movies. He could just as well not be there. His only goal is to be there, to be thirsty for Rey, while they throw other potential love interests at him, and all he could think about is Rey.
Yeah.
And she could not give two shits about him.
Like,
she forgets that he's there.
She's like, I'm not into black dudes.
Yeah.
I'm not in that black mother. All right. I mean, I'm trying not to be racist when I tell him to get with the Asian chick.
Yeah.
His relationship with Rose.
Yeah.
When Rose kisses him, I like the way, you ain't white. Now when I looked at it again, I was like, okay, he really wasn't into it. But in this movie, they don't even acknowledge it. They don't even acknowledge it. He just comes and they have a conversation. He pats her on the back. Yeah, good job. Thank you. I was like, all right, was it just that awkward that you couldn't say nothing to follow it back up? Were y'all ever, did you hit it and just didn't say nothing about it anymore?
Yeah, I mean, y'all bullied her on Twitter for nothing. She's barely hit this movie.
Y'all knocked her out. Look, that's what y'all did to her. This actually, I never thought I'd say this. This actually made me feel a whole lot better. It actually made me respect to a certain degree.
Don't say it. Don't you say it.
Okay, I won't say it. They'll say it.
Oh my God.
Flying Jew stereotypes and everything. Goddamn Negro aliens shucking and jiving. I hate to say it, but I'll have a nice tall glass of midichlorians after this. I hate this series and I hate these characters. Don't get me wrong, I still hate it. I respect that at least George Lucas tried, man. At least there was that.
Now, to your point about this being the end, I will also issue that as a caveat. I don't really think about it that way, because one of the things that's important for me as a fan and somebody who gets very, very, very immersed in the worlds that I love is like, you never really leave that world. We're always going to have more Star Wars. We're always going to be able to go back to this. And so in that sense, I don't necessarily feel like I'm saying goodbye forever. However, as the final note in this particular version of this particular thing, it was, as the kids say, it's not what you want. Any question you have, whether it's when you see Darth Maul in Clone Wars, any question you have, you can find an answer to. In canon, challenging Palpatine again, even saying I am a Sith, even when Palpatine was like, my bro, you're not a Sith anymore. Like, there's all of that story is there.
Does he say my bro?
Yeah, Sheev is like a real, real dude.
Oh.
He tried many times to cloned himself, was obsessed with cloning himself, was obsessed with this idea of essence transfer, because cloning someone with force powers is a different game entirely. Obviously, a huge part of his pitch to Anakin, when he is luring him to the dark side, is... You ever heard about Darth Plagueis the Wise? And the idea of being able to save Padme, because Anakin is having visions of her dying in childbirth. Pursuing immortality was a huge part of his storyline and always has been. So that part's fine. But which one of those things that he tried worked? I watched this movie and I don't know the answer to that. Again, we talked about this earlier. I just kind of reject out of hand the idea that you have to be connected to one of those names to be that powerful, because that gets back to Broom Boy. Like, why is Broom Boy at the end of Last Jedi actually exciting? Because you, as a person watching Star Wars, want to believe that you could be a Jedi. And if it's only Palpatines and Skywalkers and a handful of other people, and obviously, of course, the Jedi Order used to be huge, it's not only that, but that these are the chosen ones, then that is limiting in a way that feels completely anathema to the thing that I'm looking for out of stories like this. And it would also be literally saying they're all basically the same bloodline. If Palpatine made Anakin, and Anakin is Luke and Leia's father, and Leia is Ben Solo's mom, and then Palpatine is Rey's grandfather, then they are literally all part of the same family tree, and that just makes it even narrower in scope in a way that is
so much force incest going on here. It's really unfortunate.
It's very tough.
It didn't have to come to it didn't have to be this complicated. They didn't have to inject a bunch of identity politics into Star Wars. It didn't have to be like this. They didn't have to attack fans. They actually had to work very hard to destroy the biggest franchise of all time. And there will never be another franchise like this, folks. The way corporate structure is in Hollywood, we'll never get this again. Luke had his hand cut off. What did Rey lose? What did Rey lose? Maybe a strand of hair? Maybe a strand of hair. She lost the plot. No, she lost nothing. She put her hopes in a she loved a bad boy. She put her hopes in the wrong man. But she's Jesus now. She's effing Jesus now. That's a force power, by the way. There is no offense worse than the way they killed Han and the way they killed Luke, except for the way they did Leia. And again, it was shameful. And anybody who walks out of this and thinks it isn't, it was shameful what they did to Carrie Fisher. And the reason they did it was to, I mean, it's great if you want to honor her. That's fine. But once you find out how she died, and once you think about it, it's shameful. Hail, my friend Doomcock. The first spoilers he leaked were, god dang, months ago, almost a year ago, maybe. Remember the video he did on the signal being broadcast? Well, that one was right too. So Jedi Paxis has to work at Lucasfilm. Any guesses on who Jedi Paxis is? Maybe it's John Boyega. Maybe it's J.J. Abrams. I don't know. Again, 4D chess. Maybe it's Bob Iger. Maybe it's George Lucas. Maybe George Lucas is Jedi Paxis. That would be, oh man. You know, you think about it. Think about it. George Lucas is Jedi Paxis. Good one, George. All right. Just and to get rid of a white male character, because that's what they wanted to do. I did report quite some time ago from one of my insiders that one of the things that Jar Jar Abrams and Rian Johnson were told to do was to get rid of the old characters. Now, they were going to always save Leia for last. But what they did to her ended up being absolutely shameful. And you hear people in the Access media who like this film, and they're like, oh my God, Carrie Fisher, oh my God, just Carrie. It's like, no, it was embarrassing and it was shameful. But it was great seeing Harrison Ford one more time, and then when I thought about it for 2 seconds, it pissed me off. It completely pissed me off, and that was the worst part. And now Kylo is redeemable because all he did was kill his dad. So, you know, whatever. They didn't even do the identity politics right, to be honest with you. You know, Palpatine being the ultimate form of evil colonialism and patriarchy. They didn't even pull that one off right. I don't know if they dialed it down or I don't know. But when we get to the end, it's the most ridiculous thing ever.
It's like a special edition Return of the Jedi homage, considering some of the things that we see, and I don't really care, because I was also cheering because nostalgia. This movie runs with it, and a lot of fan service. And again, I don't care. I don't care. I go to Star Wars because I want to see familiar things. I want to see familiar places. I want to see familiar people. And I also want to see new people, but I also want them to reference a lot of the familiar things. Nostalgia is a real good seller. It's a fantastic drug, and I love it. The new characters they introduce, like Jaina, we don't get a great deal of backstory with, but what we do gets interesting, and enough to where if they brought her character back or gave her her series or a comic or something, I would like to see where that story goes, because where they leave it is like okay, so her story is getting set up, and I like that, because I thought Naomi Ackie did a really good job, and I liked how her and Finn work together. I mean, she's kind of the new Rose Tico, but she's competent. Your mileage may vary, and that's entirely fine, but I believe if you are a Star Wars fan, whether you are a big one or a small one, or you just happen to tangentially enjoy The Force Awakens, this is going to be one that you're going to look at and go, yeah, I'm okay with this. And then also on the plus side, you never have to watch The Last Jedi ever again, which is quite frankly the greatest gift a Star Wars fan can ask for.
And I can identify it to a line that exists in the franchise, which is "kill your past." Rian Johnson believes that line. I believe he does. What he does as a filmmaker, typically speaking, is play with form. He plays with tropes. He subverts tropes. That's his style. He plays with genre. JJ says celebrate your past, embrace your past, revere your past, almost with a sense of religious awe. And in his case, his past is George Lucas. Those are his Jedi masters, and Steven Spielberg and filmmakers of the era that he grew up in, right? And so what he's doing as a filmmaker is honoring those tropes and leaning all the way into them. Ryan's leaning all the way out, because it's not about storytelling anymore. It's about, are you doing a Star Wars or not? It's in a conversation with itself. It's in a debate with itself, almost like Rey and Kylo. Like, they're opposite forms of each other. These two filmmakers, this series is opposite forms of each other.
The scroll, if it were a conversation, if you were telling a story, it should have said Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. Anyway, and then it starts a story that is completely almost unrelated to the previous story. This is not dialogue-wise, but in my opinion, this is the worst script for any Star Wars movie ever. Because the first 45 minutes of this movie are them basically doing a second movie in the first 45 minutes of this movie that sets up the end of this movie, because the last movie didn't really set anything up in this movie that they wanted to. And it's a continuing series of ways for they're trying to get their way into the corners of how this movie can make sense telling this story that they want to make in the context of the last movie, which makes no sense anymore in the context of this movie that they are going to make. Here you go, apropos of nothing, no reason for that character to have had that item, no reason for the other character to receive that item, other than this is a thing that people have been saying in Usenet groups and on the internet and on Twitter for 40 years, so we're just going to put it in the movie. Like, that's lazy. It's cheap and it's lazy.
There's a moment that should have shattered us as Star Wars fans in this movie, and it doesn't get any time to breathe. There's no time to take anything in. What was on the table, the potential, I thought was so high.
I thought you could have taken what happened with the previous film and run with it and done something really unexpected. A big secret that they have.
Yeah. I think we know what it is, but we'll talk about that in the spoiler. I know what that is.
But again, it's that whole thing of like mystery is storytelling.
Yeah.
It's like, no, it's not. Storytelling is storytelling. Yeah. Mystery can be an element of it, but clues and hunts and quests and searches and stuff, that alone cannot tell a story.
You know, with that being said, you also hear a lot of people saying that this film has a ton of fan service here, fan service there. Yes, there is a lot of fan service in this movie, but at the same time, it works. It's earned, okay? I don't want the director, J.J. Abrams, just to be checking off of a box just to make people happy, you know, and he did do that, but as long as it works and it flows and it's earned, I am perfectly okay with it. They do answer that question, where Rey comes from. Am I completely satisfied with the answer? Dang near, okay? There's something with the timeline to where I'm just like, okay, if this is the case, I can't spoil it for you here, but I'm just like, the timeline may not just add up just all the way, but at the same time, I'll just say that I am not disappointed with the relationship, okay? I'll just say that who she is related to, I am not disappointed with that. I just kind of wish they could have, you know, broken down the timeline a little bit better, because that really just doesn't make any sense to me. Oh God, I gotta mention this. Something else that I like is, you know, we got a little bit more sprinkles of black people in this movie. I mean, my goodness, out of the whole galaxy, it's just nice to know that there are only 2 or 3 black people in the whole galaxy. So there was a little, just not that much. So don't get too excited. But there was like a couple of more black people in this film. I was like, oh, black people, they look like me. I can relate. I want everybody putting their pride aside, putting their ego aside, and just trying to seize the moment and get the job done. So if they're like, hey, we found the resistance, they're over here in this city right here, instead of being stupid and saying like, okay, let's go look for them, You have some characters who are like, okay, let's just blow up the whole city. Let's just blow up the whole planet to make sure we destroy them. That makes sense, okay? I mean, you're evil anyway, and so I want to see how evil you can be. He is the character that annoyed me the most. In my reaction video, someone made a comment, was like, man, all Finn does is buck his eyes and scream. I laughed my ass off when I read that because that's true. All he does is he does that throughout the whole dang movie, and I'm like, dude, will you please just sit down somewhere and shut the hell up? Now, I'm about to say something that may piss some of y'all off, and look, it is what it is. I'm gonna be honest. I'm gonna give you my unbiased, honest opinion. As a black man, look, if you love who you love, you love who you love, okay? I'm not gonna judge nobody if you truly love somebody, but he is not just in love with this Rey character, he is like obsessed with her. Like he wants to drink her bath water type stuff, you know what I'm saying? And it would be different if the feeling was mutual, but it's not.
I mean, there are words I could use like stunning, amazing, brilliant, awesome, but they wouldn't apply to this film. There's lots of stuff that happens in it, but there's no real meaning to it. You got characters here who I personally don't care about, and Rey, look, the first time Rey was introduced on screen, someone actually laughed. Because when you see her introduced in the film, when you see the film, you'll be like, what the is going on there? There was one scene in the film, a quick scene between Zoe Bliss and Poe, where I actually felt something for a few seconds there. But the rest of it, I didn't feel anything. All these supposedly emotional scenes, nothing. No tears were shed during this film. I want to rate this film. Probably like a 3.5, maybe out of 10. Then you got him without the helmet, and then you got him with this new helmet with the red lines on it, which looks absolutely ridiculous. It looks stupid. I almost cracked up when I first saw that. Oh god! But you know, I wish I had more positive things to say about this film, but I don't. Adam Driver tried his best with what they gave him. But just the story here is just nothing to see here. Right, nothing to see here. So that's sort of my thoughts on this film. I'll probably give a non-spoiler review in the future, but these are just my quick thoughts. I came back, had some McDonald's, trying to ease this depression after seeing this goddamn film.
I think I was so desperate for anything that wasn't the prequels that I got a bit carried away with my affection for the movie, despite saying at the time that I'd only be okay with the timid, crowd-pleasing decisions as long as the sequels weren't just nostalgia-fueled remakes of the originals in the same way. Of course, now all the movies are out, and the behind-the-scenes drama has unfolded, and it's clear they had no idea where they were going. I'm usually a complete sucker for emotional moments in Star Wars, but there was only one point in the movie where I felt any sort of weight, that being when Leia passes away and Chewie cries in utter pain, seeing as he's been forced to watch every last one of his friends slowly perish around him, and he just came to the realization that he's completely alone in this galaxy. What was the point of their characters? They were so one note. We didn't see Poe become the best pilot, and Finn's arc was completed by the first movie, so he's just been standing around, and riding horses. It bugs me that Disney seems to think that the only thing that makes Star Wars is having crazy puppets everywhere all the time, and again, yeah, they look great, but the heart is missing, because we've seen this trick being used for 5 movies and a TV show now. It's really not that cute anymore. How many times can you make the same movie? The reveal that Rey is Palpatine's granddaughter was a painfully obvious and unearned aspect to me. There is a certain level of sense to it that does retroactively explain her natural abilities from the first 2, but again, it doesn't feel like that was planned at all and awkwardly retcons large sections of The Last Jedi, making that film even more pointless to this 3-part narrative. I can't say I really enjoyed the set pieces in this one. The action scenes were actually when I was the least entertained, so I just failed to engage with the angle the story was taking. I just didn't care about anyone. It was just so stupid. And again, the humor was mostly lame.
They fly now!
My theater was dead silent the entire time, aside from one guy who was awkwardly laughing at every single bad joke. Although that's pretty normal for British audiences, so take that as you will. We are a miserable people.
That's pretty much the only good thing I can say about this movie. The acting is probably the worst out of any of the Star Wars films up to this point, especially when the characters are just so hollow to the point of you just not caring. We already didn't care much about these characters. Kathleen Kennedy specifically has no idea what she is doing. The fact that she had originally 3 different people, each person taking their own part of the trilogy, and that she basically let them have autonomy and say, oh, there's a basic story arc, there's a basic criteria that must be followed, but for the most part, if you do whatever it is you want to do, that's fine. As long as it matches the vision that I have, then you're okay. Obviously, Rian Johnson was able to play ball enough for them to say, oh, even though you're saying screw you to J.J. Abrams and everything that he set up in The Force Awakens, oh, let's go right ahead and allow you to make the film the way you want. That they always try to make it clear that time is passing a lot of time is passing from traveling to point A to point B. Even if you can travel at the speed of light, there is still a lot of distance that needs to be covered, and that takes a lot of time, at least narratively takes a lot of time. They don't really care about that in this film. If a character needs to show up, they will have that character show up and not explain it whatsoever. J.J. Abrams, if he had had his own middle film, probably could have worked out and had a film that made some sense, had a trilogy that had some coherence to it. But because this film is having to play catch up with just the backwards track that The Last Jedi did, and having to fix some of the mistakes and retcon, because honestly, I could see this film having a massive week 2 drop off. I still think it's going to make the money opening weekend, probably around the same level, if not a little higher or lower than The Last Jedi. But I would not be surprised if this one has a drop off more akin to The Last Jedi than to The Force Awakens. And I think that a real question needs to be added in. Will this film reach $1 billion?
We're all Star Wars fans. Let's take this opportunity to talk about the last Star Wars film as fans, as friends who have seen a film, and we may all have different opinions, but that's the fun of it. If we all agreed on the same thing, it'd be boring. So please just be respectful and kind in the comments, and don't be one of those people who goes and attacks people associated with the film directly, because that's just a real douche move. Or Ben Solo, presumed dead, comes back from the dead just to die because he saved Rey. It was a device to bring Rey back. They didn't need to kill Rey. They didn't need to kill Kylo. Well, I say Kylo. If I say Kylo, assume I mean Ben. I'd have much rather they'd have killed Rey and kept Ben alive, because that would have made his redemption even more significant. It would have made sense that the Rise of Skywalker, he is the last Skywalker, you know? He has risen. It's taken Rey's sacrifice and the end of the Palpatine line for the Skywalker line to rise, and for Kylo Ren to be redeemed into Ben Solo once more. And again, let's talk about the death of the Emperor. You know, having his lightning redirected back onto him and he disintegrates felt very kind of as if the writers were sitting there going, well, we don't know what else to do, we don't know how else to kill him, let's just have the lightning go back onto him and he disintegrates. It really did not seem like there was much. There was a lack of imagination. That's, I think, for me, the biggest problem with this film. Lack of imagination. And I can't believe I find myself saying this after The Last Jedi, but I really wish they had gone a little bit more outside the box.
I would give this movie a 6 out of 10. I enjoyed almost everything in it. I had a lot of fun watching it. There were some great laughs. I was engaged and excited. I cried during one scene. I pumped my fist quite a bit. Overall, an enjoyable, fun time at the movies. Sometimes he builds off of The Last Jedi very well, taking some of those ideas and evolving them, but in others it seems like he's just building something new for no reason. I'm just trying to say that this is the first film out of the sequel trilogy where I was like, oh, there is no unified vision. He was instantly endearing. Like, that's a challenge to go from the big bad to someone you can root for. And like the second he gets on Exegol and he jumps on that giant chain and he hurts himself and he climbs down and he gets beat up by the Knights of Ren for a while until he gets a lightsaber and then he does that little shrug. Phenomenal. Adam Driver is the man. Jannah was another great new addition, and I was worried 2 times throughout the movie that they would reveal her to be related to either Finn or Lando. I felt like they were about to go that direction, and then they pulled back, and I was relieved. But the fact that she and her entire crew were former stormtroopers, also a really nice touch. I didn't get my full-on stormtrooper revolt, but I feel like we got like halfway there. We learned that Finn wasn't the only bug in the system. There are more stormtroopers out there who won't do what the First Order tells them to. And that brings us to Rey Palpatine. When that happened, when Kylo told her that, I just deflated in my seat. Like, my eyes didn't roll, my whole body rolled. It just felt like the biggest nope to The Last Jedi in the movie. And there is some really hard, from a certain point of view, backbending going on to rationalize it. It feels like JJ had all of these ideas jotted down from 4 or 5 years ago, and now he's just going to force them to happen when maybe the natural progression of the story would be to do something completely different. And I think that's kind of a good way to put it, that The Rise of Skywalker doesn't feel natural to me. Like, Maz Kanata gives Chewie one of the Yavin medals at the end of the movie, like, here you go, Chewie, you finally earned it. And I'm sure, like, more casual audiences are gonna be like, yay, Chewie finally got his medal, and that's totally fine. Except I'm sitting here thinking, well, Chewie has a medal, he's always had a medal, he got one in the books and the comics, and we know that. So now Maz just gave him a second medal, and my fingers are crossed that in Pablo Hidalgo's visual dictionary, the medal will be in there, and it'll be like, now Chewie has 2.
Rise of Skywalker is the ultimate expression of the creatively bankrupt culture among the big Hollywood studios, and further proof, as if it was needed, that Disney is probably the worst thing to happen to Star Wars since the holiday special. Ugh, make it stop! What was the point in creating Snoke in the First Order at all? And what about Starkiller Base? Was that part of your plan? If that wasn't your real plan, weren't you just drawing unnecessary attention to yourself and potentially mobilizing the entire galaxy against you before you were ready to strike? You'd never guess the plot of this movie was desperately cobbled together out of the ruins of The Last Jedi, would you? Fuck off, film! Speaking of everyone's favourite Mary Sue, she's hanging out on a jungle planet with CGI Princess Leia doing Jedi training. Not Luke, of course, Leia. Because we can't have a woman taking instructions from a man in 2019, can we? That's not allowed. Anyway, she's getting even more powerful than before, because obviously she needed it. Now she can literally float in midair, leap across massive chasms, and fight training droids on a tightrope with her eyes closed. Great work, JJ, keep it up. Anyway, the word on the street is that Palpatine is planning to unleash his copy-pasted fleet in 14 hours time. Why 14 hours instead of just right now, when there's absolutely nothing stopping them? Don't know. Although if I had to guess, I'd say it's because the script wants to establish a sense of pace and urgency by giving us an arbitrary time limit to work against. The clock's ticking, people, go, go, go! So they go to the planet and there's a big festival going on, and they run into Lando Calrissian, who explains he came here with Luke to find an assassin who was seen with the dagger. But when Luke gave up, Lando just kind of hung around, I guess.
Oh yes, that's shite.
And he's been here for the past 30 years or something. Like, why? What were you doing here all this time, you absolute plank? Why didn't you leave with Luke? Why were you even interested in Sith daggers when you've never had anything to do with the Jedi or the Force? Then Kylo Ren shows up in his TIE fighter, and Rey does her ridiculous Matrix-style leap, which causes it to crash and blow up. Holy shit, Kylo's dead, man! But then the script is like, nah, he'll be fine. He gets out of the wreckage like nothing happened. Then the First Order transport takes off with Chewie on board, and Rey's like, nah, that's my Wookiee. So she pulls it back down with the power of the Force, because she's that strong now. I'd like to point out that Yoda had to work his ass off just to lift an X-Wing out of a swamp. But of course, Rey is so much better than everyone else.
I think I can smell shite.
And he himself said that, well, the other movies, you know, they didn't answer all the questions. And I'm like, but JJ, you got a complete story with the other movies. This one, There are glaring issues, glaring questions that this film refuses to answer. It doesn't have the balls or the guts to answer a more cohesive story than Rise of Skywalker. Rise of Skywalker is a mess. And for me to even say that, I never thought in a million years I would even say something like that. And don't get me wrong, I still freaking hate The Last Jedi, but that ought to tell you just how much more I hate this movie. JJ, you know, he had to spend most of his movie trying to fix that movie. Well, no, I'm of the opinion that you pick one or two things that you want to correct from that film, and you do it in a creative way. You do it in a way where it makes as much sense as it possibly can, and then you try to incorporate that in your story. Force powers in this movie. If you thought The Last Jedi like broke with the lore of Star Wars, you know, the Force usage and powers and so forth that came in previous films, you have not seen anything yet with The Rise of Skywalker. The things that they do in this movie with the, you know, Force powers and Force usage, I mean, it's just absolutely baffling to me. J.J. Abrams didn't even care about what came before. He doesn't care about the rules within the universe. Like, he does not freaking care. He's gonna pretty much do whatever the scene needs him to do. He's gonna do whatever he wants.
Visually, it looks great, and it sounds great. And you know why? Because it's John Williams, and he knows his shit. The visual effects of this movie are stunning. In fact, there are certain scenes that I wouldn't mind having a poster of and put up on the wall. Even Butthole Eyes, my least favorite character, looks like she's actually there, giving you the creepy vibe as she's staring at you with two gaping assholes. How you doing?
Now that you've said that, I can't not see it.
I ruined your life, didn't I?
Yes.
Screen 5. Minor spoiler alert, and this doesn't affect anything major in the plot. Finn, Rey, and Poe infiltrate into a Star Destroyer. But they get intercepted by two stormtroopers. Rey, thinking quick, uses the Jedi mind trick. These are not the droids you're looking for. Finn and Poe see her do this. They look at each other and go, holy shit, did she do that to us? That was funny. J.J. Abrams used the first one half of this movie trying to unfuck The Last Jedi, while at the same time moving the story along that was put in place by the chicken fucker. Like I said in the last video, imagine trying to write a sequel for Halloween 6. No one with a rational brain thought Luke Skywalker was handled correctly in the last movie. And no matter what he's paid to say, J.J. Abrams doesn't like it either.
You gotta get the thing. And in order to get the thing, you gotta go to this planet. Okay, fine. Well, inexplicably, the bad guys show up, and they're gonna try to keep you from getting the thing. But you get the thing anyway, and you fight them off, but that thing isn't really the thing. It's a thing that points you to another thing, so you gotta hyperspace over to this planet so you can get the real thing, and then the bad guys inexplicably show up at that planet to try to keep you from getting the thing, but you get the thing anyway while you're fighting them off, and then you take that, and then you go away, but the real thing isn't the thing anyway, so you gotta get another thing, and then the bad guys show up there inexplicably about 5 minutes later while you're trying to get the other thing, and then you get that thing, and then that thing points you to another thing, and then you gotta go to get that fucking thing, and then the bad guys come and try to keep you from getting that thing. What the fuck? Witness the end of the Skywalker saga, as Emperor Palpatine turns out to still be alive, and Chewbacca turns out to still be alive, and Kylo Ren turns out to still be alive, and C-3PO experiences the droid equivalent of death, but then turns out to still be alive.
In other words, nothing in this movie has lasting consequences whatsoever. But this is the actual first and only time Rey gets beaten, and I actually enjoyed that. Kylo has Rey on the ground, ready to finish her off, and then Leia shows up and goes, hey, and he's distracted. Rey grabs his lightsaber and runs him through while his back is turned like a bitch. So honorable. Force healing is weapons grade bullshit. I know what you're thinking. Force healing existed in the extended universe, right? Wah. Yes, it did. But Disney says the extended universe is no longer canon.
How narcissistic and self-righteous do you have to be to shit on the same intellectual properties you're raping and pillaging for ideas because you're too fucking stupid to come up with anything better? And your concepts of racial and gender equality, concepts, by the way, already championed in the Lucas trilogies and the extended universe, those are out of date. You gotta get with the times because male heroes are the past. The Force is female now. Weh.
And when it's all said and done, that is the real message here. Men, they're failures, and they need to have a strong, independent woman in charge so they get things right. The truly great movies work on an emotional level and a rational level. And it's on that second level where these movies fall apart. The original trilogy of films has survived the test of time for a very good reason. The good vastly outweighs the bad. In fact, we made a whole episode about it. Here it is. Check it out. This is purely escapist cinema, but it is grounded with great characters. And it obeys a set of certain rules set up within its own universe. When you start fucking with that so you can preach to people politically, you have fucked it all up. When I buy a ticket for Star Wars, I don't want to leave the theater stinking of propaganda. With that being said, the Rise of Skywalker is a lot better than The Last Jedi.
You know what is good about this? This movie has Poe and Finn and Rey teaming up. They're all together. They're having adventures.
They're quipping at each other.
They're quipping. They're having some. Their chemistry is good. Those actors are good.
They can't believe stormtroopers can fly now.
But they can fly now. They're doing a Star Wars.
Yeah, that's right. That being said, if you like lightsaber fights, there's 7 maybe in this movie. But I don't think any of them are as good as stuff we've had in this.
Like the Last Jedi throne room scene, which I've written here.
I was going to say that, but even The Force Awakens, the lightsaber sequence in that, even the prequel trilogies, the original trilogies, sure, they kind of look good, but they kind of lack the impact of a lot of the previous ones, I feel. And a lot of it felt very close up.
Yeah, there were a lot of sort of medium shots of like people's heads and shoulders.
Yeah.
And just holding lightsabers.
Yeah.
Whereas in our previous movies in this trilogy,
They've got room to flip and spin. Speaking of, if you love a Jedi flip and a big jump, hey, you are in for a treat.
If you were
this
like-
is Flip City, mate.
if you were like if you were like, God, I don't know how they're gonna achieve the quota of flips in this trilogy by the end of this. I mean, there were barely any flips in the previous 2. A lot of people, I feel like Star Wars is kind of the equivalent of comfort food. You go in to see space battles and lightsaber fights and cool force powers. Pay your $20 or whatever it is, and then you watch that for 2 hours and then you leave.
Because they're a mixed bag of films.
Yeah.
And the ones that you like, someone else might hate, and vice versa. Everybody has, varying opinions on them.
And again, none of these are perfect movies.
No.
Nor should we expect them to be perfect movies, because they are essentially like an evolution of a kid's movie. Again, they're space wizard movies.
Exactly.
So I don't know if I'm disappointed. I think this movie is exactly how I thought it was going to be, but I just didn't think it was going to be very good.
Sure.
But you know what? I saw some tweets ahead of time before I went in. People going, "Oh, well, of course it's going to be garbage." When was the last time there was a good Star Wars movie? And I went, "Oh, come on, steady on, mate. This one might be fun." And I went in and went, "Oh, actually, maybe he's right."
The use of Leia in this film is not good. This big promise of we had all this footage of her and she's going to get her big moment and this is a really important moment for her, it's a marketing ploy, because in actual fact what is so apparent now is that they did not have enough dialogue that had been filmed with Carrie Fisher before she died. She's at peak level Mary Sue. She can do things that are just... The whole thing is just now getting out. She's Space Jesus. She is literally Space Jesus now in this film. She is touching people and healing them with her powers. She's healing creatures. She's healing other human beings. She's just so overpowered. There is no dramatic tension, and the dramatic tension has got worse. And not only that, but these absurd superpowers that they give to her, they actually create contradictions in this film. If, and this is the big if, the caveat, if people allow this trilogy to stand as it is, and by the way, you don't have to, it's pretty simple. You can just say, well, I just don't accept that trilogy, and particularly this film, I just don't accept that as part of the canon. And I'll talk about why I think we've got a good sort of philosophical justification for doing that in just a moment. But if people were to allow this whole trilogy to stand and just sort of carry on as if it's now part of the actual canon, the lore, the mythology of Star Wars, what does this mean? Well, what it would mean is this, that basically Disney have now completely destroyed, well, not completely, but they have hugely undermined and done major damage to the original source material. They have actually actively attacked the mythology of Star Wars by doing what they have done. So this isn't just some sloppy writing, this is things and decisions and storytelling decisions that are so bad that they now have profound ramifications for the original trilogy, the original story, the original mythology, the original source material. They didn't do as much damage to her, and I think part of the reason they didn't do as much damage is because of this really strong identity politics ideology that is running through this trilogy now. It's clearly one of the end goals. It shouldn't have been. The end goal should have been good writing, and whatever happens, whatever comes. But they didn't. They were so obsessed with this and inserting this ideological talking point, the various mantras and ideologies into this trilogy, that I think that's why Leia, they wanted her to be a general. They wanted to put her in charge. We need a strong female in charge, and that was sort of one of their things, and that motif keeps appearing throughout the trilogy as well. And that's, by the way, why Rey is such a Mary Sue, was because I don't think they knew how to actually write a good, strong female character, and there was a fear, I think, of if we write a character as they should be written, that will make her too weak, and this is all about empowerment. That female empowerment idea has got to come first, and so this whole thing is an absurdity. It's pointless. It is. As I said, they've made a mockery of Return of the Jedi, and so what I would say is that my approach to this is that the Disney trilogy is really, it's Disney fiction. It's not authentic Star Wars mythology in my mind. It is a very, very expensive type of fan fiction, and I would suggest to you that what they've done here is simply created a story where it was like, well, imagine what would happen in an alternate universe, or imagine what would happen in an alternate Star Wars mythology. That's what they've actually done here. Because the destruction of the Emperor is actually essential to the original mythology, to the original source material that was created by George Lucas.
Hyperspace jumping or hyperspace skipping. When Poe was doing the skipping, that was hot. That was hot. Some of the humor landed, some of it. Okay, that's it for the good stuff. By the way, I was really, here's the thing, y'all. I gotta say something about this, because a lot of times actors get stuff for something they didn't even do. You know what I mean? Like, certain actors sometimes will say things to really offend the fans. I get that. But when you didn't do nothing but say the lines you were hired to say, don't jump on the actors. Don't jump on them for that. Don't bully them. Don't treat them like pieces of shit, because that don't feel good. They were hired for a job. They auditioned for it. They were picked, and they did what they were supposed to. Just got into chat. Was it worse than Captain Marvel? Oh, ooh. Wow, what a question. Was it worse than Captain Marvel? Let's see here. I'm going to use the Force on this one. Let's see. What do I feel? It wasn't. But Captain Marvel only wins by a nose. An okay movie to watch. Listen, I'll never watch it again. Never. Remember how I've told y'all, listen, you know what would get me to watch it again? Say I'm a single man and the baddest chick on the planet that I've ever dated in my life. It's like, oh, please, baby, can we watch it? I've never seen it. I know it's our first date. But can we go to your house and watch it? Yeah, that's the only time I'm going to watch it. The baddest chick on the planet is going to get me to watch it. That's it. Okay? She said, I'm on the Jedi. And Kill the Emperor just seemed like a copy version of I Am Iron Man. I thought about that. I did think about that. But he was like, I am all the Sith. And she was like, and I am all the Jedi. I thought about that. I did. Did they explain who the hell Rey's parents are? How Luke's saber was found by the little... No! They didn't explain how she found it, and I wanted them to. But they did explain that her parents were nobodies because they chose to be. That's what Kylo tells her.
This last section contains mentions of reviewers who may not have offered anything drastically different than what was in the main highlights, but I did manage to get one clip from their reviews that I liked. I will note that yes, I did watch these reviews in full, which is why they are still included in my project, just not on a grand scale like the others.
Here's what I tell you. This is all you really need to do. Maybe watch episode 7 and then watch Spaceballs. Then you will have an unlimited amount of jokes and puns and fabulous times. That's basically what happened with my brother and I. We just were quoting that the entire time.
And those were the times when I really enjoyed it. Specifically, the quiet moments. I found myself enjoying the quiet moments so much more. Like, yes, you're gonna get your battles and they're epic and everything. But
you know what I realized? Of the core Star Wars heroes, like the mains, Luke, Anakin, Rey. Rey is the only one who never took damage. At first I was like, well, she's the only one who never lost a hand or an arm, and then I thought about it and I'm like, she never actually took damage.
Original Star Wars trilogy, probably the best 3 films ever made, that it has become people's lives. Like, people identify with this to the point where it's people's lives and parents bond with their children over it. That's all for nothing.
The real question for me is like, are audiences ready for another saga in 2 years, which they've announced earlier now, which has now been on the shelf? Well, I don't think anyone wants that.
All the shortcomings of Rise of Skywalker, or nearly all at any rate, are a direct result of the creative choices Rian Johnson made and Kathleen Kennedy approved of in The Last Jedi.
So yeah, guys, like I say, I mean, this movie, coming out of it, I feel so brain dead. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot to think about.
So I went in with a notepad, even in the dark, and I wrote down every time, and honestly, it didn't take long for me to realize, oh no, there are some major problems happening here in regards to the story and plot.
The obvious question becomes, if Kylo can reach out across light years of space and grab a pair of beads around Rey's neck, why can't he just grab Rey and transport her to his location?
And if you're looking for a coherent through line at this trilogy, at this point it feels clear that Awakens was meet the new heroes, Last Jedi was here's who everyone definitely isn't, and now this one is, okay, here's who they definitely are.
The way things happen, the way they actually play out, is like a little kid did it. Like, honestly, it feels like a little kid created this movie. And, you know,
he had a lot of emotional moments and some pretty bad written dialogue sequences, but Adam Driver's an amazing actor, and so I really liked seeing him do his part. But I wish we would have focused more on him than Rey, considering the name of the film is Rise of Skywalker.
While Finn and Poe act as the film's heroic men of action, the story strains to establish them along with Rey as a close-knit trio on par with Luke, Han, and Leia, when the reality is the characters have spent more time apart than together.
If this was the direct sequel to The Force Awakens and I knew for sure we were getting one more movie to conclude everything that I just saw, I would be so thrilled. I would be like, that movie was fantastic, oh my god.
And I think you do have, at the heart of it, 2 very, very fine performances by Daisy Ridley and Adam Driver, who I think are the emotional heart of the film. I think that if we start with all the good points, it's a very handsome looking film.
I have to say that after watching all those previous movies, trying to build up for this one, it felt like a big letdown.
No, son, there are no more Star Wars films. There was just the 3. But why is it called Episode 4, 5, and 6? That's shh. We don't talk about the other Star Wars films.
Oh man, that's great. Whereas The Mandalorian, I feel like, has introduced several characters, side characters, and I'm like, damn, I want to see that one again.
The script is clunky. There are things inside of the that doesn't make a lot of sense at all.
Is it clunky?
Nice. Well done.
That's my only contribution to this non-spoiler review.
No, it's good.
I was gonna do that, but I knew it would flop.
You're right.
Going into this movie, I wanted this to be a great Star Wars film. I don't want to go see a bad Star Wars movie. I don't like to go watch bad movies. It's a waste of time, and I have other things to do. Like, play with fucking lightsabers, man.
I think people who were upset with The Last Jedi for very specific reasons will like this film.
I'm going to predict that they won't, because I think they'll see it as the pandering that it is. Which is just going to suck doubly, but you know.
I think you underestimate how much people like pandering sometimes.
Maybe.
When he caught it, I was like, I also sort of had like the little like the politics of it running through my mind, but I was also like, I'm much more okay with Luke having thrown it now, because this is like, it's like a redemption story. It's like, if Luke could do it, we wouldn't need Rey. So they have to sort of tear down Luke, you know, a little bit. And like, to me, yeah, it was bothering me forever that he just tossed it aside, because I feel like so much of like the way I grew up, like Luke Skywalker was like one of my heroes, you know? And it's like, if Luke Skywalker doesn't care about lightsabers, then what was it all for?